It's Britney, bitch. Today's the day. We're going to talk about the Britney Spears Conservatorship. I put it up to the channel members to vote. This is what you picked next. Thank you so much for being a member here. Part of being a member is that you get to help direct the content because there's lots of stories and only one of me. So thank you, law nerds, for being back today. If you're new here, I'm Emily D. Baker, the badass lawyer, host of the Get Legit Law and Shit podcast, and legal commentator. I've been a licensed attorney for over 15 years, but I'm not your attorney, not legal advice. And I am a big fan of the cursey words. So headphones are recommended because over on this channel, this is where the law nerds unite to break down the news stories that you want to hear about with facts, not fuckery. And we are just going to jump into this and talk about the Britney Spears conservatorship, hopefully answering your questions about what happened today in court, a little bit of a background of what the conservatorship is, and what I think will happen from here. So let's just get right into it. There is a podcast outlining a lot of the facts running up to the conservatorship, everything that happened like pre 2007 into the conservatorship in 2008. And because that's a very detailed breakdown, I'm going to put that in a card up above, link it down below so that you can go watch it if you want all the factual run up. Today, we're going to talk about the conservatorship and what happened in court on November 11th, where Britney had a motion to suspend the conservatorship of her father, and that motion was denied. But it's not all bad news. And it was not a motion to remove him that was denied. It was a motion to suspend. So we're going to break all of that down and what it means. But first, we've got to get into a little bit of a breakdown, don't we? A little bit of background. I should say that if you would like to connect with me for things like when YouTube goes down, you can do that either on the Instagrams at the Emily D. Baker or through our text community, which is available currently in North America. We're working on expanding it. And then you can text me and I can text you when stuff happens and be like, don't worry, YouTube will be back up. It's down. I'm sorry. I know my videos aren't playing. So let's jump into what a conservatorship is. If you are not familiar, sometimes it's called a guardianship, sometimes it's called a conservatorship. This one is a bit unusual because they are generally reserved for people who are older. They're generally put in place for people who are unable to care for themselves in some way due to either physical or mental incapacity. So this is something you can see in people with dementia or people, adults with mental disabilities, things like that. I have to say, for me, this is an odd situation of the conservatorship that it's been going on for 12 years. With this conservatorship, a lot of the court proceedings are not open. Britney has been fighting to make them more open, but with that, they have to determine she has the mental capacity to understand what opening the court files in a case like this up are, which includes all of her medical records and things like that. So currently, they've determined that she cannot waive that yet. Like she's not at a place where the court or the attorneys feel comfortable that she is understanding what waiving the privacy in this proceeding means and that she doesn't really have the capacity to make that decision. This conservatorship is really grounded around mental capacity for Britney. There are some things that raise questions for me in here, but there is a lot unknown in this case. And there are some presumptions that we can talk about. Like it sounds like this is what's going on, but we don't know because we don't have access to all of that information. There's also some stuff going on in this case that just sits weird with me. The length of the conservatorship, the productivity of Britney during the conservatorship, the fact that the conservatorship can make her work sits odd with me because that's not normally the case. If somebody has dementia, you can't force them to go, perform a world tour or release a new album. So the forced work part of this conservatorship and the fact that her father can enter into contracts for her and force her to uphold them sits really weird with me, because it's not the normal situation when somebody doesn't have the mental capacity to govern their own affairs or their own life. Normally, they can't also go out and make money. And that's really a lot of what sits odd with me about this. The Free Britney movement argues that Britney is being held in this conservatorship against her will. I think in her court filings, we're seeing more and more that she is trying to regain levels of freedom. And this is going to be a slow process. But I think there were some things that came out of court today that were A, good to learn, and B, good for Britney. And there are going to be little steps forward. We are not going to see giant leaps forward in this case. This judge, in the rulings that have happened, to me, it seems very clear that this is not going to be a case where we're going to go from a conservatorship to not a conservatorship. There are going to be a lot of little steps in transitioning some of this stuff, transitioning Britney's personal freedoms. I don't think, with regard to the finances, we will ever be completely out from that, but that's not unusual for somebody with her celebrity status to have a management company managing your finances, whether that's under a power of attorney or a conservatorship. So for me, what I would like to see is Britney having more personal ownership and autonomy over her own life and her day-to-day life, and having a team she feels safe with managing her money, and then also having some boundaries as she moves forward into having more autonomy, because she has not had that for 12 years and it is going to take some adjustment. And I think that that's a safe and considered thing to do, given how long she has been unable to make these decisions for herself. You don't want to see her become tremendously overwhelmed. And we see this, I hate to analogize it to people who are released from prison, but that's the experience I have as a former deputy district attorney. And it can be quite unsettling going from a very controlled and structured environment to a less controlled and structured environment. And I think in this, setting Britney up to win involves taking these smaller steps, though there are things the court has done that confuse me. So that said, let's just get into the rest of it. A conservatorship means that Britney is generally restricted from managing her own finances, hiring, firing, deciding. But also, there's a conservatorship over her person. So there's a conservatorship over her estate and her finances, and then over herself. And with regard to herself, it means that she needs permission, if you will, to drive, have children, get married, talk about the conservatorship, use the internet without supervision, use social media without supervision. And I know a lot in the Free Britney movement say she is not using social media freely on her own. That is being done and handled for her, and people questioning how much she's seeing of it and what's going on behind the scenes on social media. There's lots of videos here on YouTube about that side of this case. So because there's a wealth of information there, and I have not dissected Britney Spears' Instagram, we're going to stick to the legal stuff. So the conservatorship gives control to a third party over a person's finances or their personal choices, or both. And in this case, it's both. Today in court, Britney's team was asking that the father not be able to actively be the conservator, as they try to bring in a financial company to be that financial conservator. There's a temporary conservator in place over Britney's person. She's been asking to make that conservator permanent. That hasn't happened yet from everything I've found, because her father stepped down in that capacity due to health issues. So was still doing the financial, but it stepped down in the personal day-to-day. And there's another conservator in place for that. Britney has been asking to make permanent. But with regard to the financial side of it, the court did appoint that financial company that Britney was asking for as a co-conservator with her father. Britney's camp was reportedly, all of this is coming from reports because I didn't see the court proceedings. All of this is coming from reports. But Britney's camp was saying that they wanted the financial company essentially to take over as full conservator. Britney's father's camp was saying, I should not be suspended as conservator. I've done nothing wrong as conservator. I should remain as the financial conservator. And the judge said, we're going to make you co-conservators. I think this is a good step towards the company taking over. One of the things that was reported, the judge said, was that it could be significantly disruptive to have the father completely removed as conservator, but that the judge was open to hearing another motion for removal or suspension. What that reads like to me, what that signals to me, is that this might be a stepping stone to bring the trust company in and allow a transition period. It doesn't say that specifically in the court documents. That is what it looks like to me with bringing them in as co-conservators, but making the statement very clear that the judge is open to hearing this type of motion again down the road, indicating to me that this might be a transition period. Before today's hearing, there had been hearings in September and October. Britney was trying to have the conservatorship end. It was extended to February 2021. She had filed a number of petitions to try to change things in the conservatorship before that date. Those had been denied. So today's hearing was really a chance for some changes to be made. I don't know if Britney's camp is happy with the changes that were made, but it is not a complete loss. It's a step forward. And again, these are going to be baby steps. One of the other things that gave me hope in seeing the court proceedings today is it was more open. This was a public proceeding. Britney's mother was able to be present. Britney, however, was not present, which was interesting to me. But Britney's mother was able to be present. Britney's mom's attorney made a statement for her on her behalf, saying that her daughter should not be forced to obey her father's unreasonable demands, that their relationship is toxic, and that it's broken Lynn's heart that things have gotten this far or come to this point, and that it's time for a fresh start. And so it seems very much to me from that statement from the attorney that Lynn is on the side of removing Jamie from the conservatorship and allowing Britney to have a professional team of, if not her choosing, of her working with the court and choosing. Because for a long time in this, Britney wasn't even able to pick her own attorney. There were years early in the conservatorship where Britney was fighting to get an attorney that she hired, and her father was blocking that, saying she doesn't have the capacity to hire legal counsel. So she didn't even have someone on her side that she got to pick. And I wonder if that's why the thing with her business manager sat so poorly with her from these reports. Britney had a business manager recently quit. Her father appointed a new business manager. This came up in the hearings today. And in the Associated Press article, Britney's father's attorney is quoted as saying that hiring the new business manager was keeping continuity in the management of Britney's estate, that it was his job as a conservator, and that he had no legal obligation to inform her of what he was doing. He has no legal obligation to inform her of what he's doing. I, how? 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 That's one of the things so frustrating for me about this conservatorship is Britney's asking for more transparency, and her father's camp is saying, you're not entitled to it. Like, I don't have to tell you who I'm hiring. I don't have to tell you how I'm spending your money. I don't have to tell you that your business manager quit. Nobody told her, according to these documents, nobody told her that her business manager had quit and her father had just hired somebody else without her participation at all. I would feel so trapped with that happening in my business, having no control over who determined my life. And in these court documents and these court proceedings, we're seeing that fight for transparency and for ownership. Jamie's attorney stated that I don't believe there's a shred of evidence to support my client's suspension, stated that he was doing a good job under the conservatorship by asserting that the net worth of Britney's estate went from fighting tens of millions of dollars in lawsuits to well over $60 million. So during the 12 years of this conservatorship, Britney's dad, Jamie's attorneys are stating in court that the estate of Britney, the business of Britney, has gone from fighting tens of millions of dollars in debt to having over $60 million in worth. Okay, well, either she is not mentally capable of running her own world, or she's a highly productive pop star. Like, I don't understand how those things mix. Most stars at her level have business managers that just pay for everything, that handle everything, that book the flights, that pay the bills, that make sure all that shit's handled. That's not odd. But if somebody can work at the level where they've swung in 12 years to a $60 million net worth, they're capable of doing something. And that's what's so confusing to me. D- do we really need Britney to not be able to drive a car? I understand not turning over the reins to a $60 million empire. She probably doesn't even want that. I wouldn't. It's like, let the money people handle the money and make somebody else check on it. But can I please just go get Chick-fil-A when I'd like to? Like, I don't understand how the conservatorship can maintain that it is healthy for her and that she is capable of working to the level that she has worked during the last 12 years, but that she's still not capable of making the decision of if she wants to go for a drive or who she wants to spend her time around. I understand that part of this conservatorship started to keep her away from people that were negative influences, keep her away from people that were manipulating her and potentially after her money, and that she was going through a very hard time. That was 12 years ago. So now I would really like to see this start to swing towards more personal autonomy and leave the business part of this conservatorship where it needs to be. And I hope that bringing in this other company, the financial company, as a co conservator to her estate is a bridge so that a professional management company can handle her estate and her financial affairs. Somebody that's not connected to her father, because it's clear that that's not what she wants, and then allow the temporary conservator to become the permanent conservator and start reducing the restrictions on her day-to-day life, because then the personal freedom, at least she can feel like she's living a life that she's choosing. But that's part of what's so strange for me, is that someone who has these types of day-to-day restrictions because they have something like dementia also aren't living a day-to-day life where they are able to go on a world tour, film television spots, record albums, hold a Vegas residency for years. Their day-to-day life doesn't look like that due to the mental incapacity. So for someone who they are still arguing there is mental capacity there. We don't know what that is because we don't have those documents. But what we see is her actions. So for me, if you're doing a Vegas residency, you are able to function somewhat in a day to day capacity. Yes, managing all of the money to that might be hard. Yes, you might still need some help. But I would presume most celebrities have some sort of personal assistant who helps with their day to day affairs and a financial manager who manages the financial side of it. I know people who have financial managers. It's not odd. Um, so I feel like there's room here to step that down because she's shown that she's so productive. And because of that, being aware and wanting to live fully and then not being able to, I think would be kind of the harshest consequence of this conservatorship. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to really start to pull back some of these reins. And I hope with the more open procedures, we get to see that and we get to see what the court is thinking in continuing the conservatorship in this way. I don't think the conservatorship is going to end out of hand. I think it's going to be phased. And I think the personal freedoms will come first, and the financial stuff will probably stay in some sort of a financial trust for quite a while, if not moving into a uh, power of attorney situation with financial management. I also don't know if that's something that would bother Britney because, again, it's not uncommon to just let somebody handle the financial affairs when you're dealing with a business the size of the business of Britney. What else we learned today from Britney's attorney, because remember, Britney wasn't there, from Britney's attorney is that Britney is afraid of her father, according to him, that she will not perform again if he is in charge of her career, and that she and her father have not spoken for a long time. Now, Jamie's attorneys said that that's because Britney's counsel has told her not to speak to her father. That was their kind of rebuttal to that. But I feel like this is Britney's way of putting her foot down and saying, "You're not going to force me to work anymore." And it's, again, it's such a strange thing with a conservatorship where somebody has the capacity to work at this level, but then doesn't have the capacity to manage their day to day affairs. And so it's a strange hybrid of a conservatorship. And I very much want to know why we can't move away from her father being in the place of control when clearly this is what she wants. And her mother is also saying that that's what she wants. So I'm hoping that bringing in the Bessemer Trust company will allow for there to be a transition period to move her father away from managing the financial. And then I hope that the court will take her temporary conservator over her person, not her father, and make that person the permanent conservator. And then start to change the personal conservatorship to give her some more autonomy and then deal with the financial. That's the way I see this proceeding in best circumstances for Britney. I don't think there's a scenario where the conservatorship just ends anytime soon. I think this is going to be a phased in ending. And we've seen so many recent court filings. And I feel that because Britney finally has legal representation that she feels comfortable with from what all this looks like, there has been a lot more court activity with her trying to establish autonomy. And I think that we will continue to see Britney's legal team pushing things forward on this for her. And the push towards more transparency in court really spoke a lot to me that her mom was able to be there as an interested party, that there's more transparency in the proceedings. I've seen reports, not in any of the major media, but in the Free Britney movement, because people were and did attend this hearing. Um, Saying that Britney's father related her to a racehorse, saying that she needed to be managed as such, making that kind of a cold analogy. I haven't seen that in any of the major media stories on this. I've only seen that within the Twitter breakdowns of people who attended the hearing. And I think it's interesting that that's not coming up in the media articles about this. What's coming up in the media articles are how much the estate's worth, that the co-conservator was appointed, that Britney has stated she's afraid of her father, that her mother has said it's time for a fresh start, and that her father's camp has said that they do not owe her any transparency in the process and they're not required to let her know what they're doing with her business or with her money. Those are the things I've seen reported. I want to talk about the business manager real quick and how that went down too. So I will link the articles I'm relying on down below, but according to queenscitizen.ca, back in November 2019, Britney's business manager, TriStar, was trying to renegotiate the payment plan or the way they were making money with Britney, and the father approved the new arrangement, reportedly without negotiating it, and that included a percent of commission and an annual minimum payment of like $500,000. So it really increased, according to this article, the amount that Britney was paying for her business management, and that the increase to the company and that the financial increase to the company was about a 260% increase in what they were being paid. And this is part of why Britney has been asking, it seems, for more transparency in the case because of things like this. But then that business management company quit, and her father went ahead and appointed a new business manager without notice to her. And that's when we learned today in the court proceeding that his position on that, as stated through his attorney in court, is that he has no legal right to inform her of his moves as conservator of her business. And that's really where this whole thing becomes the most frustrating. And I hope that having a co-conservator in this case will help. I hope that having professional conservators now, a temporary professional conservator over kind of her personal day-to-day, and then this co-conservator role over her estate will help her start to make steps towards more autonomy. I try to be neutral, but in this, I don't understand some of the restrictions here, given how productive she's been. I understand the financial restrictions. I understand why this started. I just don't understand why it hasn't moved along more towards letting her have a little bit of freedom. And we don't know all of the court documents and the backstory on that, but we can see the behavior and we see what's being filed in court and we see Britney fighting for more freedom. And it's clear that she feels that that's right for her. It's hard to say because her father's arguing she doesn't have the mental capacity to make that decision. I hope that the court is acting in her best interest. We will see what happens on the December 16th court date. I would imagine Britney's legal team will now bring a full motion to remove her father as conservator, not just suspend him. The judge indicated she would be open to such a motion. It's really quick to bring a motion like that. So this December 16th hearing could just be a hearing to set another hearing. We won't know until we see what happens, but I will continue to break this stuff down. If you want the full background of the conservatorship and the beginnings of it, I will link that for you. I very much appreciate you being with me, breaking down what happened in court today. I don't think it's a full loss for Britney. I do think there was a little bit of a win here. I think that this court is going to take baby steps towards whatever comes next. There aren't going to be any sweeping wins here, and it's going to be frustrating for all involved, I'm sure, and frustrating for the Free Britney movement that really is cheering for her to regain some of her personal ownership and autonomy over the way that she lives her life. Again, I think the reasonable expectation in all of it is that the financial stuff continues to be professionally managed and that the personal stuff begins to open up a little bit and she begins to have more freedom, because I think these court documents are indicating that that's what she desires. Again, it's a weird thing for me with how much she's worked. And over the past 12 years, the estate didn't go from facing millions of dollars in lawsuits to $60 million without her showing up and working her ass off. Yeah, her father was the one who was signing those contracts and making those deals happen. She was the one creating the music. She was the one showing up on the tours and at the residency. So in this circumstance, with those facts, it's very hard for me to understand why the personal autonomy bit hasn't happened sooner, hasn't happened faster, and we aren't seeing little bits of that being given back to Britney. And I really do hope that we see that very much. And that breaks that down. I hope this was informative. If you want that full deep dive, I've linked it like 4 times at this point. I would love to know what you think. I would love to know if you have any more questions about this. I'm here to help answer questions and to break down the facts as I see them. This is what I'm seeing from what we have out. One day, will we have all of the legal documents? Will we know more of what happened behind the scenes? Maybe, maybe not. I think that's something her father will probably fight to not release. Whether he's doing that in his best interest or hers is for you to decide for yourself. And I hope we see her getting a little bit more personal freedom. I really, really do. Connect with me everywhere. I'm at the Emily D. Baker. The podcast, if you're looking for it, is the Get Legit Law and Shit podcast. If you are a channel member, you will have gotten this early. If you want to get it early, you can become a channel member. Happy to have you support what we do here on the YouTubes. And if you want to be part of the text crew, text Emily. Thank you so much for hanging out. I will talk to you in the next one. Bye.